All right, I guess we're live. I hope so. Seems like we're rolling. So this is going to be a little Q&A today. This is the first time I've done live on this channel, so I'm just hoping that it works. Have some questions here. I'm assuming that we're okay, so with the live. So I have some questions here. So we're going to talk about what Cassandra syndrome is and why no one believes you. So I have some questions here that I've condensed down. It's not the entire question. I've kind of condensed it just for lack of time from commenters on this channel. So feel free to comment below this live video if you have any questions. One lady was not familiar with the term, because I'm looking at my questions as over here instead of looking at the camera. She was wanting to know what Cassandra syndrome is. She said she hadn't even heard of it until yesterday. Okay, well, it describes a kind of a chronic emotional invalidation, and it's usually experienced by the neurotypical wife when her emotional world is consistently unseen or unresponded to in her marriage, which is usually with an ASD level 1 husband. So even though Cassandra syndrome is not a diagnosis, it's not something that is in the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders, and it's certainly not a label to shame anyone. It's, you can think of it as just a description of a lived experience. So women experiencing Cassandra syndrome often say, you know, I feel invisible, I feel emotionally abandoned, I talk but nothing changes, I feel like I'm losing myself. So we'll just leave it at that. I could talk a lot about the backstory on Cassandra syndrome, but we'll just leave it at that for the moment. Another listener wrote, and again, this is kind of a condensed summary. Everyone says I'm lucky. Why doesn't it feel that way? So she went on to say that most of the people that knew the two of them, they really liked him, the ASD husband. Thought he was a great guy and great worker and so on. But of course, they don't know what goes on behind closed doors. So that's kind of a general way of stating some of these questions that are going to come up right now. The lady says, why does everyone think my husband is fine, but I'm falling apart? Okay, well, because they don't know what goes on behind closed doors, and most people evaluate relationships based on visible behavior. They don't see what's going on at home. So they're just going on basically what they see when the husband is out there with you, and he might be masking, I don't know. So your ASD husband, in the eyes of others, he may appear responsible, intelligent, dependable, not abusive, socially appropriate, and so on. So from the outside, nothing looks wrong, right? But Cassandra syndrome is about what's missing. What people don't see is the emotional silence, the lack of follow through when you need him to do something, the absence of comfort during distress when you've been sick or we're having a bad moment, the one-sided emotional labor. In other words, you do all the relationship work. No one sees that. So when you speak up, you know, and tell maybe one of your friends about what's going on, and this friend knows the both of you, that's when the Cassandra syndrome business really hurts, because you know, your girlfriend or some other friend that knows the two of you, they might say, well, at least he's not abusive, or he's just wired differently. Oh, well, if he has ASD, I heard it's just a condition or a different way of thinking. Or maybe you're expecting too much. Okay, so that just invalidates everything that you have experienced. And slowly, your confidence is eroding. Okay. Here's another general question. Several listeners ask variations of this next question, often with a lot of self-doubt, and here it is. Why do I feel like I'm the problem? Okay, well, I would say because emotional neglect trains self-blame. Let me repeat that. Emotional neglect trains self-blame. So when emotional bids are repeatedly missed by your ASD husband, your nervous system looks for a reason. Why? And the fast explanation is you. You may start thinking, I'm too sensitive, I shouldn't need this, maybe I'm too needy, otherwise don't struggle like this. He functions fine everywhere else, walks fine, talks fine, looks fine, works fine, smartest man at work. So maybe I'm not as pretty as I used to be, or I'm overweight, or not as funny. So there's a lot of this self-doubt. But when a core attachment need goes unmet for a long time, which in Cassandra syndrome, that's what's going on, your brain concludes that this environment is lacking, and it also concludes I must be lacking. So that's not truth, that's survival, if that makes sense. Okay. Here's another theme. One of the most common and confusing questions I've received was this one. She says, is this gaslighting or just autism? And I get another one sometimes, is this narcissism or autism? Because a lot of times it looks the same, okay? So this question deserves some kind of a nuanced answer. Autism can involve some things that look like gaslighting. It can involve some things that look like narcissism. For example, difficulty reading emotional cues, literal thinking, limited emotional expression, reduced emotional reciprocity, and so on. Gaslighting, on the other hand, involves denying your reality. So here's the key distinction. Autism may miss your emotional reality, right? It may miss your emotional reality, but gaslighting dismisses it. That's two different things. But as this matters deeply to you, right? Being missed emotionally still causes harm, even when it's unintentional. So you are allowed to understand autism without erasing your pain. The next question. Why does it hurt so much if he's not doing it on purpose? Okay. Well, your nervous system doesn't track intent. Okay, it tracks safety and connection. If you are watching this video and you feel like you have Cassandra syndrome, then trust is shot and you haven't felt safe, and he hasn't felt safe either for a long, long, long time. So emotional safety comes when you're seen, you're being responded to, there's some emotional mirroring going on, right? And you don't get that with an ASD husband. Again, there's no malicious intent on his part. End result's the same though. So when those experiences are missed over time, your body interprets that as a relational threat. And that leads to anxiety, depression, emotional numbness, hopelessness, quiet grief. So you're not overreacting. You're responding to chronic emotional starvation. And that is going to possibly weaken your immune system over time. That's when it really gets sad. I've had many NT wives say that there's been literally decades, 30, 40 years of just no emotional nurturing. And so now she has fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, other autoimmune disease. By the way, I have a Cassandra syndrome recovery group where we talk about self-care. I'll have that link in the description and pinned in the comment section. I also have a book specifically for Cassandra syndrome, neurotypical wives. I'll put that in the description and link too, because if you're suffering, time's not on your side. I'm sorry if you hear some dogs barking in the background. Next question. Why do I feel like I'm screaming into the void? Well, because you're speaking in emotional language he doesn't understand. You understand emotions, you process it quickly and unconsciously and intuitively. You communicate in feelings, meaning, subtle emotional cues. He may be listening for facts, problems, solutions. He's real good with numbers, graphs, engineering, computer programming. You're good with relational stuff, so the two of you do have kind of a mismatch. So the more emotional you become, and your emotions are important, the more overwhelmed or defensive he becomes. And now we get this cycle of miscommunication. And next question, am I allowed to call this neglect? Yeah, as long as you don't say it's intentional neglect, yeah. But neglect is neglect. It doesn't have to be intentional. It can be quiet, passive, unseen. But when your emotional needs are consistently unmet, then neglect is definitely an accurate word. And so naming it isn't about blaming him. I'm sure he's a good guy, but it's certainly about clarity. Okay, so in closing, I want to say that you're not crazy. You haven't been imagining this. You're not too sensitive. You're not demanding. You have been experiencing what, gosh, tens of thousands of other people are experiencing. And this is mostly a female thing, but I've had a lot of neurotypical husbands say that they certainly believe that they are experiencing Cassandra syndrome too. So your experience is real, and even if no one is validating it, and even if people have told you, well, you're just overly emotional, and maybe your ASD husband has even said, you're too clingy and too needy. Okay, well, you're not. So that's the little quickie question and answer thing today. I think in the next episode, we're going to talk about loneliness inside the marriage and why it cuts so deeply for you and why it often turns into depression. So until then, be gentle with yourself, and you've been carrying more than anyone realized. And so if people don't get it, don't worry about it. We get it. And the other people that are on this channel probably get it too. Again, I have a Cassandra Syndrome Recovery Group coming up in, I think, February. This video is coming out here on the December 17th of 25. And I'm going to link my Cassandra Syndrome Recovery book in the description and in the comment section too. So now, having said that, be sure to comment under this video and ask some questions because I'll include those in the next thing. On that note, the next thing is going to kind of be loneliness inside the marriage. So let's kind of keep it on that theme. I know it's kind of a broad theme, but let's kind of really narrow in specifically on that. Okay, I hope this worked. This is my first live here on this particular channel. I'm not even sure how to shut it off at this point. So I'm sorry that this is awkward. I'll have to figure out how to stop the video. Anyway, God bless you and stay in touch as I try to figure out how to stop this video.